Fight night looks like the main event. The lights, the crowd, the ring walk, the music. It feels like this is the fight. But here's the reality. Fight night is just the receipt. The actual fight that already happened. Weeks ago, months ago. In the gym, in the diet, in the mornings nobody saw. Everyone worships the performance, but the performance isn't the work.
Steel and shadow, fists fly high, breaking through limits, I reach for the sky. Martial instincts power my stride, fight principles guiding my fight.
Sawadee Krap and welcome to another episode here for Fight Principles, where we look into martial arts and see how it applies to real life. And as always, we start with the fight world. So think of Kamaru Usman. People used to ask, how does this guy never gas? How does he keep that insane pace for 25 minutes? It wasn't magic. It wasn't fight night adrenaline. It was endless hill sprints, track work, or with his short knees, elliptical work, wrestling drills until his lungs were on fire. Fans saw performance, but the fight was already won during months of cardio misery. Or GSP, George St. Pierre, people call him boring sometimes. Too methodical, too safe. But you know why? Because it already solved the chaos before the cage door even closed. He spent camps breaking down opponents' tendencies like a chess player. And by the time the performance came, he wasn't improvising. He was executing. Now compare that to fighters who fall in love with performance. The guys who look like a movie star on Fight Night, choreographed walkouts, custom music. But you find out later they skipped road work, they coasted in camp, and so on. Their performance might look good for 30 seconds. But once the punches land, the truth shows. The highlight reel is just the IG story. The grind, that's the actual movie. And there's a reason why we worship the performance. And why do fans and even fighters get trapped in all of that? Because performance is visible. It's shareable. It's sexy. Nobody buys tickets to watch you puke after a weight cut, right? Nobody's lining up to see you spar 6 rounds at half speed. We live in a culture of spectacle. We fall for the moment because the moment is digestible. And fighters themselves, they start to drink that Kool-Aid. They think the show is the thing. And that's why fighters burn out. That's why they look shocked when their show falls apart under pressure. If you look at communication theories, we can turn to Erving Goffman, very famous sociologist. He said, life's a stage. And he said, we all perform roles. We have different roles that we show in different situations. We have the work self, we have the family self, and in our example right now, we have the fight night self. But there's a catch to that. Fight night isn't improv theater. It's rehearsal made visible. So if you rehearse sloppy, you will perform sloppy. If you skip conditioning, the performance will collapse. The audience doesn't see the month of rehearsal. They just see the mask crack when reality hits. But it's not just communication theory. It's philosophy. You can turn to Aristotle. Aristotle nailed it centuries ago. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. A famous quote nails it. A fight night isn't excellence magically arriving. It's habits being revealed. So, to stick with our example, GSP's habits, discipline. Usman's habits, relentless cardio. Nate Diaz's habits, endless rounds of sparring and triathlons. And bad habits get revealed too. Remember BJ Penn late in his career, really sad to talk about it, gifted, freak talent, but eventually hated conditioning. When Fight Night came, the performance exposed the truth, no gas tank in the end. In the beginning, it was the other way around, right? And let's turn also, like we always do, to psychology. There's this thing in sports, like I'm already struggling saying it because I don't want to burst the bubble, but in sports psychology, we talk about process versus outcome. And we say if people who focus only on the outcome, the win, the applause, the highlight reel, if they face adversity, they will crumble under pressure. They're obsessed with the performance. On the other hand, we talk about people who fall in love with the process, the drilling, the grind, the boring stuff. They will thrive. And that's why Floyd Mayweather was untouchable. He lived for the process. Past tense, he lived for the process. The training camps were year-round. Fight night was just a receipt. And yeah, let's stack some contrasts, okay? Mike Tyson. Pure spectacle. The walkouts, the aura, the knockouts. Awesome. But behind that, a savage process in Gus D'Amato's gym. Head movement drilled thousands of times. That's why the performances looked supernatural. But as soon as the process slipped, when the camps got soft, when the hunger dulled, the performances crumbled. Tyson's mask slipped. Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., over 100 fights. He didn't build those fights on performance hype. He lived in the gyms, grinding. Fans saw performance. But the work, it was decades of endless sparring in Mexico. Probably the best example right now, Conor McGregor. One of the best performers ever. Walkouts, trash talk, precision knockouts. But when the process lagged, think Nate Diaz won, think Khabib, think Dustin Poirier, the performance wasn't enough. Yet the receipt showed the bill hadn't been paid. And yes, that's a nod to Dustin Poirier, paid in full. And now let's look into life. How can we take this into life, right? Because this all matters outside the cage as well. We all live for the performance. We are honest here, right? We all live for the performance. But the performances are on the fight. They're the receipt. Let's look at this, okay? The wedding versus the marriage. Everyone sees the wedding, the dress, the photos, the perfect IG grid. But the fight is the daily grind of communication, compromise, patience. A good wedding doesn't mean a good marriage. Or let's look into education, the graduation versus the degree. Everybody claps at the ceremony. But the fight was the 3 a.m. study sessions, the student debt, the late papers. Graduation is just a receipt. The job promotion versus the career. People see the awesome LinkedIn announcement. They don't see the late nights, the failures, the risks. Or look at funerals. Sounds morbid, I know, but think about it. Nobody at a funeral remembers your spotless attendance record. They remember the grind of your life, the habits, daily presence, the moments you showed up. We live in a performance culture, and social media makes it even worse. Everyone's curating the highlight reel, nobody's showing the grind. But the grind is what defines you. So think about IG influencers. You see the Bali trip, the sunset yoga, the boss babe captions. That's their fight night. What you don't see, the credit card debt, the fight with the partner, the anxiety medication. And honestly, that's pretty comforting to me, because it means the perfect performance is pretty much always fake. The truth is in the work that nobody shows. So here's the principle. Fight night is not the fight. The performance is not the work. The performance is just the bill being paid. If you fall in love with the spotlight, you're just a tourist in your own lines. If you fall in love with the grind, you become dangerous. Because then, and only then, the performance becomes inevitable. Excellence isn't built under lights. It's built in the shadows. Fight night is just a receipt. That's been Fight Principles. Go out and grind. We talk soon. Saudi Cup.
Steel and shadow, fists fly high. Breaking through limits, I reach for the sky. Martial instincts, power my stride. Fight principles guiding my fight.